What's up, everybody? It's Frederick Douglass Bussey. We're back with another whiteboard session. I'm super excited to have you here with us today. Today, we're going to be talking about the big problem with small thinking. Maybe you've been thinking that you've been thinking big. Maybe you haven't been thinking big enough. What has it been costing you? And how can you learn how to think bigger and actually actualize, implement, and execute on a higher level? Let's go to work. One of the things that I encounter oftentimes when I'm coming up with, when I'm talking to clients or potential clients, when I'm talking to entrepreneurs, is asking them a very, very simple question. What is your goal? What is your goal for your business? It could be for this year, it could be over the long term, 5, 10 years, whatever the case may be. But where are you headed? What is your target? What are you trying to hit? A couple things always kind of come to mind for me when I'm seeing this, right? And one of those challenges is they don't know specifically what that goal is. And two, it seems to be based around these two words, one of these two words, which is what is reasonable or what is logical, right? Practical, if you will. And so today we're going to talk about why those two words don't really need to exist in your vocabulary for a very, very particular reason. Now, first of all, before we dive in, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, watching this on YouTube, watching this on Facebook, like, share, comment below. Let us know where you're watching from. Let us know what you're discovering in the process. And if you have questions, I'd love to hear your questions as well. All right. That being said, why does practical thinking not really play into what we're doing? I remember I was having a conversation, and I may have mentioned this before in a video in the past, but I was having a conversation with a young man, and he was talking about his goals for his business. He was just starting out, right? And typically I don't work with startups as much anymore. But when I was talking to him, he was just kind of talking about what he wanted to do. And he was saying, well, my goal is about $90,000 for my business. That's about all I really need, right? And so $90,000 for the average person puts you in the top 20% of earners in the US, right? $90,000 in other parts of the country and other parts of the world would be an extraordinary salary. But $90,000 for a business is actually very low. And one of the reasons why I talk to people about this is because there are things that come up that are always going to happen that if you're not capable of dealing with that, how are you going to be able to help other people if you can't help yourself? Because that is one of the things that comes up. A lot of people say, well, I want to be able to help other people. And so the more I can make, the more I can help others. But then they put a cap on how much they're going to earn, how much their business is going to be able to create. And therefore, there's a cap on your own value. So I'm going to illustrate it in this way, right? So here we have a chart, and I call this margin thinking, right? And basically, margin thinking is about what are you thinking about the margin that you're creating in your life and in your business, right? This is one way of illustrating that. And so a lot of people, when they talk about, well, I just want to make 6 figures, right? If I can make 6 figures, that is a magical number. And 6 figures doesn't represent what it used to represent. And also, I want to talk about the disparity in not being specific enough with the hugeness of your goal or the target that you're setting for yourself, right? So here we have a business that is hitting $100,000, right? Now, when we say 6 figures is actually a very wide range. 6 figures goes from 100,000 all the way up to 999,000, right? So let's say that you hit $999,999, all right? That's still 6 figures. But that mark is essentially 10 times, 10x $100,000, which means that if you have a lifestyle, if you have expenses, if you have opportunities that come up to or exceed $100,000, your capacity is maxed here, which means that you can only explore options that are $100,000 or below. I can only live in a certain place. I can only hire certain talent. I can only have access to certain tools. And certainly there is a startup mindset. There is a lean startup mindset where you say, well, we learn how to maximize things to be more creative, etc. But the fact of the matter is, if you have more margin, you have a greater element for success. You have a greater margin to be able to adjust and to pivot on the fly when things come up. And so we want to be careful about what things we are thinking about in terms of how big we want to grow. Now, big can be scary, and that's always a possibility. But I want to ask you a question that I think will seriously illustrate where you are or the possibilities that exist beyond perhaps what you're thinking. And you might not be you might be past $1 million. You might be, but if you want to 10x this and go from $1 million, turn this 100K into a million and turn this 1 million into 10, or turn this 100 into 10 million and turn this 1 million into 100 million, whatever the case may be. Wherever we are in our journey, there is a cap. There is a place beyond which we believe is not realistic or logical. And so one of the things that I love being surrounded by certain individuals, whether it's in a mastermind or high-level entrepreneurs, is being exposed to their thinking, right? And that doesn't just apply in entrepreneurs. It can apply in athletics. It can apply in science. It can apply in technology. It can apply in psychology. But understanding that there is no real cap. The only real cap is what we put or impose upon ourselves in terms of our thinking. How can we expand that, right? And so again, going back to our chart, this here represents the margin between what's possible and what you thought was possible. And this is what you're working with. And so if you are not thinking about how you can continually be expanding your reach, your influence, your resources, leveraging the different aspects of your business to be able to scale all of those elements, you are essentially putting yourself in a box. You're putting yourself in a $100,000 box. And yes, it's a 6-figure box, right? Or it's a 7-figure box or an 8-figure box. And that box might seem bigger than any box you've ever thought of before, or the box where you are right now. But what I'm telling you is that if there is limitless potential, right? Because $1 million is not the cap. $1 million is just all the space that we have on this chart. And in your mind, you don't have to be limited to just that. And if you start from this place, right? If you started from here and said, my goal is here, now you are reimagining the steps necessary to execute on. Now you are reimagining what is possible. Now you can start to look at all the different things all the different possibilities that play in here. Who could you hire if you had more resources? What could you accomplish if you had more? How much faster could you move, right? What could you be able to support in terms of other endeavors, philanthropy, whatever the case may be? Who could you mentor? How much more time could you create? How much less stress would you have if now you're working with a greater margin for error, right? So the question that I want to ask you to really empower and undergird this entire thing is, if you were certain that you were going to succeed, how much bigger would you be thinking? If you were certain you were going to succeed, how much bigger would you be thinking? And see, that really goes to the heart of where we are in our businesses. I've sat with teams. I remember I did a facilitation for a team a few weeks ago. And one of the challenges that we were dealing was, I walked them through this process we call target practice. It's part of our Scalosity model. And we're working with entrepreneurs. In this organization, part of that target practice model is starting with the end in mind and saying, let's assume that we've already gotten there. One of the biggest challenges that organizations face is the inability to see a goal as an inevitability, to see it as having already occurred, right? When we look at a goal, all of a sudden, psychologically, we start to create all of these barriers and obstacles. We see all the things that can keep us from getting there. We see all the things that will prevent us from actually achieving that goal. And what I'm trying to get you to understand is that once you create inevitability in your mind, all you're doing is moving backwards from that point. And if you can do that, all of a sudden it shifts everything you have. If you knew that $1 million was inevitable, if you knew that $100 million in your business was inevitable, what would you do differently? How would you move differently? How would you shift things? And see, one of the things that really challenges us is that we are conditioned from a young age to be safe. We are conditioned from a young age to make sure that we are coloring within the lines so that we don't get reprimanded, so that we don't put ourselves too far out there. Because being out there is outside the tribe. Being out there is unsafe. Being out there puts yourself at risk. And so we want to minimize risk. Now, the thing that we don't often correlate with big thinking is that it's actually less risky to think bigger, right? Because if you were thinking about $100,000 and the possibility of risk, anything can happen. When you were only making $100,000, now you're at more risk because 10% of your revenue could cost you your rent, could cost you time, could cost you your health, whatever the case may be. So if there's a 10% reduction in what you're capable of making, it can hit you that much harder. 10% of $1 million is actually $100K. So that still leaves you with 90%, $900,000. Or actually, in the case of $999.99, it leaves you with $899,999, right? So you are 9 times more anti-fragile. You are 9 times more capable of withstanding the blows that come about. Now, it doesn't matter whether you actually make it to $1 million or 200,000 or 500,000, whatever the case may be. Every time you add another level of, or a factor of 1 or factor of 5 to your success, to what you're able to acquire or achieve through your business, you're actually able to be that much more powerful. So even if you doubled your thinking, doubled your goal, you'd be twice as likely to be able to be successful. The challenge is that it's not about the number. It's really about why you believe what you believe and what it's going to take for you to be able to shift your thinking to be able to execute at a higher level. Because your goal, when you start to see it as inevitable versus hopeful, right? The Bible talks about faith is the evidence of things not seen. What we often talk about is when we're saying, well, I have faith that it's going to happen, we're saying we hope it will happen. But faith is not hope, faith is certainty. And so when you're operating from certainty, it shifts the way that you move through the world, through your business. It shifts the way that you actualize things. It shifts the way that you talk to people. It shifts the way that you lead your team. It's hard for people to buy into a vision that you hope is going to happen. But when you are certain, you can transfer that certainty to other people. You transfer that certainty to your employees, to your clients, to your prospects, to the market. You look at certain people and they exude certainty, right? So when you look at Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos, those people exude certainty. And it's not because they don't see the impracticalities, they don't see the obstacles. It's because they understand that if they have a certain level of belief, a certain level of knowledge, a certain level of certainty, they're going to work from there. And they're going to be able to break through, because at the end of the day, we have to believe that we are capable of overcoming any obstacle to achieve what we want to achieve. If you are certain, then nothing will stand in your way. And when you move in that direction, you're able to create infinitely more powerful outcomes for yourself, for your family, those you care about, including your customers or clients, your employees, and for yourself. So let me know in the comments what you're thinking about this, what you're discovering from this whole process. Let me know on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, like, share, subscribe. Let me know how this is impacting you. And if you need support, would like support in thinking bigger and growing your business and creating more opportunities out of the obstacles that sometimes seem more obvious, then maybe you should reach out to us. Give us a call. Drop a message below. Send me a DM. Let us know how we can support you and what you're up to. Because what we want to do ultimately is help people understand they can dream bigger, they can move, they can be better, and they can go further than they ever imagined possible. That's our whiteboard session for today. I'm Frederick Douglass Bussey. Hopefully it's been valuable for you. As always, ever forward.